Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about coding questions. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, is solving a coding problem such as finding the nth prime number and other such coding problems a different skill set than building software applications? No, it is not. Technically, it's not. But I think I need to elaborate a little bit on this. So this question was posted on an old video where I was trying to explain that although it might not be the most relevant thing in the world to know about certain what I like to call trivia questions, where the coding interview that you do to get a job as a software developer usually in some cases it includes problems and questions that are of a fairly high level of complexity in terms of what you need to know in computer science or algorithms or so forth. It's a phenomenon, and in some cases it's more related to the thing that you're actually going to do. And in that video I simply state to you that you don't actually know what you're going to face at like whatever company you're interviewing for. And so this question was posed, and basically like the short and long, the long and short of it is that no, there is no difference technically between the skills that you need. But what I like to emphasize here is that when you ask a person how to say, for the sake of, let's just take the nth prime number, that is absolutely a problem that you can solve with code. It's a fairly straightforward problem to solve with code. But my question is that the thing that you would want to know about the person that you are interviewing? So what I wrote back and I said, well, think about it this way. If I had only one test to give, say, a driver or someone who is claiming to be a driver, what would I test? Would I ask them to show me how they maneuver in the car, or ask them about some basic rules about how to actually can I ask them how would you operate an automobile? Uh, that's something I could do, but I could of course also ask them to change the tire or explain to me how they change a tire. And so my question to the subscriber was basically, which of these two questions would you feel is most appropriate to ask when you're trying to figure out if somebody knows how to program? And so that is the problem that I try to emphasize a little bit in what we like the coding interview and the sort of challenges that you usually face. There are absolutely very good computer science related questions that are very relevant and tests your ability to problem solve and so forth. But the thing that I think is lacking in a lot of these interviewing questions is an emphasis on testing the skills that actually reflect the job that you're going to do. The reason why this is actually very, in my opinion at the very least, why I think this is very important, it's not just to make things easier on the candidates themselves, but it's also a way for the company to understand their own internal process and the people that they are hiring. Because if you as a company, if you don't have the internal skills to figure out what you need from a candidate. Well, if you give someone a computer science question, all you really know about that person is they could solve that algorithmic problem. And I have seen plenty of companies and interviewing processes where in some cases they are actually so quote unquote lazy that they take an even famous algorithm. They ask you to implement something like the Dijkstra algorithm, which to be fair, is something that you would only really know if you've taken a course. It's not even a guarantee that you take a computer science course and you learn about Dijkstra's algorithm, but it is something that you could very easily Google for. And here's the kicker: just because you know how to use the Dijkstra algorithm, that doesn't necessarily mean that you know how to spin up all the environments, use Git, and deal with all the logging systems and all the complexity of the gigantic monolith that the company has. How will Dijkstra's algorithm check if the candidate knows how to do all that stuff? Well, it doesn't. It doesn't check that at all because it's not designed to check that. What it's checking is, do you know something about computer science. That is basically what you're testing. And I think that that is, in some cases, a very relevant question. But the problem here is that you might actually have, as the company might actually have a screening process for their candidates where they're actually getting in people who are not actually fit to be in the company, even though they could pass the coding challenge. And that is a danger in of itself, because what you're trying to figure out is not whether or not somebody knows how to find the nth prime number or knows how to use Dijkstra's algorithm, unless that's a very central thing to your business for some reason. What you're trying to figure out is this person here going to be capable of producing the maximum amount of value for my company when they're on the inside of things. So ideally, you should formulate tests or a testing process that is to the greatest extent possible reflects the stack that you're using in your company, or something very similar to it at the very least. It doesn't have to be the exact thing, and tests the candidate on the sort of work that you expect them to basically be able to do on day one or within a very short time period. And that is something that a algorithmic test will simply not check. Now, if you ask me personally, what I think that what you should be doing as a company, I think that this is a balance. I mean, as someone who goes through these tests, and I'm very sorry to say that it's not that fun to go through multiple steps. But if you really do want to have a fairly accurate screening process, prepare 2 sets of tests. Prepare one simple test that simply tests because that's something that is very nice about these more algorithmic types of questions that are more traditionally found in computer science. They're very cheap. They're extremely cheap in terms of screening people, and you can have them as a first line of defense for the company if you want to save on time, of course. I mean, you don't have to have that either, because it's, as I said, it's a bit of a balancing act. If you test people too much, they're going to get people are going to get exhausted and irritated by the fact that you're forcing them to jump through all of these hoops. And if you are Google, or you're very sure that you're still going to get people through the pipeline, then go for it. But for the average company, have that as possibly the first minimum test that you give someone, something that you can give them like almost off the bat, just when they're in the maybe pile. And then make sure that you have a follow-up test or something that more accurately reflects the thing that you're going to ask them to do when they're inside the company. Because this is a mutual thing. It's good for the candidate so that they understand what am I getting myself into, and it's good for you as the company to actually know what you are requiring of your internal of the people inside of your company. And I've seen so many organizations who they don't have the slightest clue of what their internal engineering department is doing, or like how their internal processes are working, and it always ends the same way. You hire people who are in many cases not even prepared to do the job, and in some cases you blame them, like you created this friction relationship because you're not training them, you're not providing anything. If you are, that's great. And in many cases, as I like to say, you pay the cost of hiring people that are inexperienced within the area that you're asking them to work in, and that is legacy code. Legacy code is usually the thing that you get when you hire people who are unprepared for the challenges that you're going to put in front of them, when you don't have any training regimen or anything like that. Yeah, I would even say that on average you're going to pay that cost in legacy regardless of if you train them or not. So what I want you to take away from this is that yes, I'm very sorry to say that, or I'm happy to say, depending on how, I don't know if you can be sad or happy about this thing, but asking questions such as finding the nth prime number or Fibonacci and like implementing that, or doing like a graph searching algorithm or something like that. All these computer science questions, guys, they are the same thing as, or they leverages the same sort of skills that you use in software development. The difference is that these problems are much more they're more mathematical and logic oriented than business logic oriented. In other words, it's similar to saying that, well, a person who drives a taxi is needs the same sort of should have the same sort of focus and the same sort of test when they're getting their license as someone who's going to be a professional race car driver. I'm not saying that one is better than the other. I'm just saying that there are differences between what you're going to do. If you're going to be a mechanic who works on motorcycles, or you're going to be a mechanic that works on automobiles, it's the same sort of difference. You're using the same sort of things, but the things that the person who's hiring you should be looking at are usually a little bit different. And that's why I argue to have an effective strategy for figuring out if somebody's a good fit for your company. Ideally, if you want to save yourself a lot of hassle with screening a lot of people and investing a lot of time in each candidate, having a computer science question up front is a good strategy of just getting the first screening process going. But somewhere along the line, it's really important for everybody involved that you have some way of asserting that this person actually knows how to sort of deal with the tools that you're going to give them. Unless, as I said, you have a lot of patience as an organization and a training strategy for how to deal with a person who might be able to solve a computer science question, but is not so prepared to deal with all of the nuances and complexities of the system that you have. Have a great day.